quote you from the Tanakh. Who knows what the Tanakh is? The Torah, the prophets, and the testimony. Okay, the law, the prophets, and the testimony. I just want to give you some verses. This is from Zechariah chapter 12, verse 2. Behold, I will, God will, make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. That prophecy is being fulfilled right today. Verse 3, and in that day will I, God is doing this, will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. And finally, verse 6, in that day will I make, and this is representative of everything the retired general said, will I make the governors of Judah like a hearth of fire among the wood, and like a torch of fire in a sheath. And they shall devour all the people round about on the right hand and on the left. God said he will do it, and the general has given testimony to that fact. Do we have a question? Greg.
Yes, General. Thank you for coming tonight and explaining everything. I think it was absolutely
Thank you
wonderful.
for being here.
And but I have a question. How come so many of the Israeli intelligentsia seem to be more anti-Israel than you would imagine? Like every day I read in Haaretz about how everything that Israel is doing with the Palestinians is wrong. Why are they themselves being so against themselves?
Okay, we have to distinguish between two major places. One place is Europe, the other one is the United States. In Europe, the growing anti-Israeli sentiments are parallel to the growing anti-American sentiments. To a large extent, it is being nourished by the Muslims in Europe. Anti-Semitism, we know it for sure. Everywhere there is a big concentration of Muslims, there's rampant anti-Semitism. In the United States, it's exactly the opposite. There are more people, considerably more people supporting Israel than people who criticize Israel. Even as far as churches is concerned, and Tom was speaking before on the replacement theory, I want to give you a list of Christian churches who renounced the replacement theory, which was actually brought forward the first time in the half of the 2nd century by Justin Martyr. Here is the list, and it's very enlightening. The first one to reject the replacement theory were the Lutherans in Germany in 1950 following the Holocaust. Then the Catholic Church, believe it or not, the Catholic Church in 1965 had the courage to renounce the replacement theory, which was nourished by them for almost 2,000 years. In 1972, the United Methodists said the Jews are the covenanted people. In 1987, the Presbyterian, and I'll speak in a minute about the Presbyterian, said this teaching is harmful. God's covenants are not broken. The church has not replaced the Jewish people. And in the same year, the United Church of Christ said, God's covenant with the Jewish people has not been abrogated. God has not replaced the Jewish people. God is faithful in keeping his covenant. Just a word about the Presbyterian Church. Again, I said a few words about leadership. It's not at large in the Presbyterian Church. The whole thing was initiated by 4 people in the Presbyterian Church, one of them from the Middle East. these four people had the audacity to go to Lebanon and meet there with the Hezbollah, the terrorist organization which killed and kills American and Israelis, hug them, say that we are brothers. They didn't meet with one single Christian person in Lebanon. This group of four. They have the meeting sometime in June, beginning of June, and there's a large movement within the Presbyterian Church against the decision to divest. One word, perhaps, about the African American Church, as far as Israel is concerned. Leaders of the African Americans have decided to go to have a big mission next January to Israel, a large mission, a mission of solidarity. So this is again contrary to what their political leaders, some of their political leaders, the views of some of the political leaders. The same leaders, they don't say a word about the killing of black people in Africa. They were killing, first of all, they were killing Christian people in Sudan, and now they are killing even Muslim blacks in Darfur, just because they are blacks.
I'm looking for some understanding about the roadmap for peace. My take is that the U.S. has always been an ally of Israel, and that anytime if you mess with the apple of God's eye, you're bringing condemnation on yourself. And I believe that that's what the U.S. has done by furthering, as part of the quartet, to partition Israel. Can you give me some insight that would make me think differently, that maybe this is a good thing? Because it looks to me like it's absolutely against the will of a holy, righteous God.
In one of the chapters of Psalm, God said, I will make you strong and I'll bring peace to you. I don't remember exactly the chapter, but that's the last verse in the chapter. In other words, peace is realistic when you are strong. When you have the strength, then peace is realistic. When you don't have the strength, and this is the first requirement, to make you strong, whether it's United States or Israel or any country. When you are strong, you can afford to have peace if it serves your purpose. You make the decision about it. If it serves your purpose. If it is a true peace, absolutely. There was war between Belgium and Holland for tens of years. For tens of years, there's hardly a policeman on the border of Belgium and Holland. Because neither Holland nor Belgium is a Muslim country. There was even war between the United States and Mexico. There is no war now because because United States is strong and Mexico will not embark on a war, and number two, because neither Mexico nor United States is a Muslim country. Peace in a Muslim country is shifting sand. Muhammad said that you are making peace if it serves you, but you don't have to keep the peace. That's what he has done with the Christians and Jews in Saudi Arabia, in Hijaz. We cannot trust them. We simply cannot trust them. The Islamists, obviously, we cannot fight 1 billion Muslims. So what could be done about it? We have to promote those who are not extremists. And there are enough people in the Muslim world who criticize the Muslim leadership. And the other thing is something that is being done, will be done by the church on the way, a large church of about 15,000 people in Los Angeles, establish an Arab Christian church. Yes, when they become Christians, they are entirely different. everything changes, which means it's not the nationality, it's the Islamic faith, which is the root of the problem.
It's good to have you here, and it's nice to hear the truth. I have just two questions. One is, or an observation. One is, I read that Churchill knew about Hitler because he read Mein Kampf, and he knew what was on the horizon during World War II. In our government, do they read the Quran? Do they understand what this book is about and what the Islamic faith believes? And then, okay, and then the other one is, and this is maybe more delicate, is I read in WorldNet Daily about Osama bin Laden and this whole idea of the American Hiroshima, and I don't know if you know anything about that, where he's trying to sneak tactical nuclear weapons across the border into American cities.
First of all, does the United States government knows what goes on? Of course they know. Are they sensitive to what goes on? Yes, they are sensitive. The president is very sensitive, very sensitive. The issue of terrorism is his main concern. And his main concern is that we'll fight terrorism outside the United States and not inside the United States. The fact is that we got a whole bunch of papers of the Al-Qaeda. And from the papers, it's utterly clear, and it's stated very clearly in the papers, that they were stunned by the response of President Bush after 9/11 and the war in Afghanistan, which eliminated the Taliban there. The fact that here and now you have some cases doesn't change the picture. Moreover, they use the word, we thought that United States is a paper tiger. We didn't realize that President Bush is not a paper tiger. They said it very clearly. So when it comes to terrorism, President Bush considered it his chief duty because he considered his duty the protection of the American people. As simple as this. Now you ask me a question about Churchill, I believe.
The question regarding Churchill was he read Mein Kampf, so he knew what Hitler was all about. But the point he was trying to make is really related to the Quran. The Quran says it all with regard to where the Islamic mindset is. Is anybody reading that here? I think that's your question, wasn't it? Yes.
Okay, there is no doubt that Churchill was the right leader for England during World War II. No one can take away his leadership. And he realized it before he became prime minister. He fought for it. He said, don't be deceived by Hitler. The European countries, especially France, prefer to be deceived. But it doesn't mean that he doesn't make mistakes. And he made, in my opinion, two grave mistakes. One, the creation of Iraq at that time. He created the state of Iraq. And the other one, which was worse, was the creation of Jordan. For some reason, they thought that the Arab world, and Roosevelt thought the same thing, thought that the Arab world can be an ally of the United States. Roosevelt went so far that when he had a meeting with the king of Saudi Arabia, King Ibn Saud, instead of inviting him as the big country, the biggest country in the world, the most powerful country in the world, instead of inviting him to the White House, they had a meeting on a boat not far from Egypt, from Saudi Arabia, as though he is equal to him. This was wrong, a wrong message. What did Saudi Arabia do to help United States in World War II? At the best case, did nothing. At the worst case, by doing nothing, they helped the enemy of the United States. So the issue of the Arabs is a very serious issue. Every one of you who is here in this hall will admit that we would have been much better without the whole group of these Islamic countries all over the world, because they are the only ones who create havoc in the world. The Indians don't do it, India don't do it, the Filipinos don't do it, even the Vietnamese don't do it. The only problems that we have now in the world, which affect every single one of us, are the Islamist people. And Churchill, if he would have been more thorough in his research, he would have come to this conclusion, not in year 2006, when he cannot reach the conclusions from his grave, but at the time when he was in a position to reach the right decision. We should not be carried away with impressions of some power which does not exist. We are still, United States is still the most powerful country and has to behave like this. And the main message that the United States has to give is we will save no effort to respond to anyone who is endangering our people.
Quickly, I'd like to say thank you for coming to our community. Knowledge is power, and I hope that God continues to bless your life. Secondly, my question is, Anwar Sadat, was he a dreamer or a jackass?
Anwar Sadat came to the conclusion that if he wants to do really something for Egypt, Anwar Sadat was the president of Egypt during the Yom Kippur War, that if he wants to do something for Egypt, he has to eliminate the war, the prospect of war between Israel and Egypt, and divert the resources to improving the lot of his own people, of developing Egypt. The truth is that he sent some kind of a message to the Israelis before the Yom Kippur War, a few years before the Yom Kippur War, and the messenger was not convincing enough, and the Israeli thought that it's a misleading message. But as it appears, it was a serious message of Anwar Sadat. And when he realized that the Israelis rejected, then he decided that one thing that can change the map was launching a war against Israel, and following this war, he can conclude a real peace agreement with Israel. That's the solemn truth, and we have to say it also about people who are enemies of Israel. So he launched the Yom Kippur War. He achieved one great thing with the Yom Kippur War. Besides the peace of his peace with Israel, he achieved also, he kicked out the Russians. When there was a discussion of having an international force in the Sinai, one of the Israeli leaders, and I don't want to name him, said, well, we have to really have an international force there, and I for one, I'm not even against the fact that in the international force will be Russians. I must admit that in some cases I have a very short fuse. Yitzhak Rabin was a close friend of mine, and I rushed to him and I said to him two things. A, it's time that we realize that the United Nations is united nothing. Don't deal with them. Don't trust them. And number two, the Egyptians have just kicked out the Russians. And now you want to bring the Russians through the back door into Egypt? He said to me, you know what? When I met the Egyptian, it was not yet Sadat. Sadat dealt later with Israel. But when I met with the Egyptians at the ceasefire in Egypt, and the Egyptian territory, which we had, that's exactly what they told me, that Sadat has not kicked out the Russians to bring them back through the back door. To make a long answer to a short question, to finish it, Sadat was a serious man, and maybe this was the reason why the Islamic people could not accommodate him in Egypt.
General, you've mentioned the covenant. What is your sense of the people and the leaders in Israel in this exchange of land for peace?
The question of land is quite a complicated one. The main reason Sharon was so eager to get rid, in his language, of the Gaza Strip is for one main reason. He is afraid of a democratic problem. By the way, this demographic problem exists also in Europe, because in order to keep the same equilibrium between dead people and newborn, you have to have a rate of 2.1 newborn people in Europe. And the rate in Europe is an average of 1.7, so the population decreases. In Israel, he definitely didn't want to swallow up another 1.3 billion people, which will increase considerably and will endanger the fact that it is a Jewish state. So he thought, well, at least it's Gaza Strip, which was never an Israeli territory, not even in the biblical time. It was always a Philistine territory, the largest, the strongest people at that time in the Middle East, so much so that even the Egyptians were not easy with the fact that there are Philistines there. It was not given to any of the tribes. If you open the book of Joshua, no tribe got a part of Gaza. So he said, at least from the biblical point of view and from Israel future's point of view, I can deal with Gaza. He admitted that there was a mistake in the way that Israel has settled Judea and Samaria. Instead of accumulating these settlements along the border of Israel, beyond the Green Line, which means in the territory which some people call Palestinian, instead of having there the territories and this way extending the Israeli rule within the Palestinian Authority and drawing the map in a different way, the settlements were spread all over, and some of them are very small settlements. So it is a problem, and again, we are, when I say we, this time I mean the Israelis, are eating the fruit, the spoiled fruit that some of our former leaders have prepared for us. In 1967, I, disclosing some secrets, but the people who are involved in it already passed away, so Moshe Dayan is one. I was one who demanded, not demanded, but opposed any creation of another entity, and I recommended with many others, on the left and on the right, to keep Israel as a whole state like it was in the biblical time. In other words, to swallow Judea and Samaria, which are actually the biblical Israel. I think that my leaders at that time were not courageous enough. They were too afraid by the international reaction. This is the results of eating the sour grapes today. there was another thing which is interesting. There was a meeting of senior officers with the Minister of Defense, which was Moshe Dayan, after the war, after the Six-Day War. And when he finished and he asked if there are questions, I had a question. And I said to him, why don't we use now that we have conquered the whole city of Jerusalem, including the Temple Mount, to put up on the Temple Mount a Jewish synagogue and a Christian church? And his answer was, well, this is what you suggest. I think that we are lucky that you are not one of the political leaders of Islam. He poo-pooed it, but there was a continuation to it. There was a Yom Kippur War. And after the Yom Kippur War, he came to Los Angeles. He spoke for Jewish leadership at the Sephardic temple in Los Angeles. I happened to be at that time in Los Angeles. I spent half of my time in Israel. And when I read about it and I got the invitation, I came over there. I entered the door. Imagine that the door is here. He was standing at the farther end of the hall speaking to some people. And suddenly he saw me coming in. He stopped his discussion with the people. He rushed over to me and he said to me only one sentence, "You were right," and he went back.
General, could you add to that about the Golan? Is Israel going to give away the Golan Heights?
I don't know if Israel will give up the Golan Heights. I can only tell you that I'm vehemently against it. I'm vehemently against it for many reasons. But one of the reasons is my loyalty to my fellow fighters. The Golan Heights is absorbed with Jewish blood. And I'm not one that easily is giving up land which is absorbed with the blood of my soldiers and of my comrades, commanders. I'm against it. I also recall that before the Six-Day War, there were 8,000 cases of Syrian bombardments of Jewish settlements around the Lake of Galilee. 8,000 artillery bombardments. I don't trust them. I think that response should be very swift, and a big no should be delivered to the Syrian. Let me give you perhaps, I just recall because it was connected with what happened before the Six-Day War. An Israeli colonel was killed by a mine which the Jordanians have planted in Israel when he went with his car. And I've been asked to respond. The response was a raid on a Jordanian town, which was conducted within 24 hours after the killing of the colonel. 24 hours, where we have killed 18 Jordanians military people in this raid and destroyed 235 houses in this place. It gave a lesson to the Jordanians so much that they were very hesitant to join the Six-Day War. Another thing that I have kept at the raid, that's a story that goes back to World War II, when I was a junior officer in the British Army, and then on the Battle of Bologna, apparently we left in our unit, we left a bleeding person for 7 days, and when we found him eventually, he was bled to death after 7 days. And I made a vow that in any operation that I participate as a leader, I will be the first one to land on the enemy soil and the last one to vacate it. I was the first one in this raid to be on this Jordanian village, and I didn't leave the place until all my people left. Maybe it's not exactly what is prescribed in military manuals, but it is prescribed in something which is much more meaningful to me, my moral values.
General, we have been in 2 wars since Vietnam. Vietnam and the Arab 91 war, and now we're in this one. And my concern is that the American people are getting tired of war and not winning decisively. And especially in these 2 wars we're in now. And Vietnam, of course, officially was pretty well lost. My concern is the American people are not going to continue to stand by and allow war after war. And Israel, I believe Satan is waiting for a moment where the American people, especially the Americans, are going to fall back and say, we've had enough. That's my great fear.
The American leaders, first of all, could have avoided Vietnam politically at the beginning, but if not, we could have ended it in a much more positive way if the army would have gotten a free hand to handle it. I understand why the American public, it affects until today the American public, therefore the first Gulf War and even the second Gulf War, where a military victory in Iraq was achieved within days. They demolished the Iraqi army. What happened later is not part of the military campaign. If we would have had enough intelligence in Iraq to handle the things that happened afterwards, things would not have happened as they happen today. You are right about Iran. Iran is the great danger. I don't think that we will rush into a military confrontation in Iran. It's much more complicated. It's also complicated as far as the development of the nuclear arms are concerned. They learned the lesson from Iraq when Israel has demolished the nuclear reactor in Iraq. They have spread over the centrifuges. The centrifuges are producing the rich uranium. They have spread it over 39 places in Iraq. They have ungrounded it. It doesn't mean that the bombs that we have, I mean, the United States has, they have bombs that can penetrate this concrete isolation, but it's a very complicated thing, and there are still ways to reach some solution without embarking on a military operation in Iran. By the way, the Russians, our good friends that remained a powerful state, because during World War II, we provided them with oversupply of arms, not enough just to withstand the German and get out of the war as a weak country, has provided Iran with very sophisticated anti-aircraft missiles. So this is also something that we'll have to think about it very carefully, because we'll have, first of all, to demolish the sites of the missiles. It's not a simple thing, and I understand. But again, what we have to emphasize to the American public is that everything we do is to protect every single person in the American public, every single person who sits here, because they are worried about what goes on. And so far, there are still ways to deal with it. And one of the ways to deal with it is to usher in a demise of the Islamic presence in Europe. I think this is one of the big things, because otherwise it will come here, and it already came here. I graduated Columbia University. Columbia University at my time is not the same Columbia University which is now. All the universities are anti-American. Plainly said, they're anti-American. There's a book, 101 Professors by David Horowitz. If you can get the book, read it, or read about it in his web. The enemy has conquered the first bastion in the United States, and these are the universities. And there is actually an unholy trinity in the United States. The unholy trinity is the universities, the media, and the Islamic organizations in the United States.
General, I have a question just about your general message here. You want to exhort us in a particular way, and you told us that it is in our hands, and you've emphasized the point that is the protection of our own families. And practically, for us as American citizens, most of us, normal Joes, what is your exhortation to us as far as the effect we can have? Is the implication of your speech today that Christian people should be pursuing political places in America for better leadership that would act decisively in relation to things such as Islam in the world?
Churches cannot be political because they lose the status of tax-free entities. But people who attend churches, there's no reason why they shouldn't be political. Politics means protecting yourself. That's the essence of politics. There's no reason why you shouldn't go and make sure that you and your friends are going to vote. There's no reason why you shouldn't approach your governor and say to him, hey, there are Muslim mosques in our state, and what we want you to do is to give the same message that the Pope gave the Muslims in Germany and the Prime Minister of England gave to the Muslims in England: stop preaching hate in the mosques, because I'm not going to tolerate it. And I'll kick out all the imams who preach hatred in the mosque. So this is a thing that nothing should prevent us from doing it. Nothing should prevent us from approaching our senators. And you have, by the way, both senators in my book, the Senator Gordon and even the other senator. I think they are good people, although they belong to different parties. Approach your senators and say, hey, we don't want the immigration to this country as it happened in Europe, and we want you to stop it in two ways that they are coming here. One way they are coming is that our representative in Arab countries are very liberal in issuing visas to them, and we want to stop it completely. And the other way is they cross the border, guided by the drug cartels in Mexico, how to reach United States. Some of these drug cartels, at least I know of two of them, are drug smugglers, have already converted to Islam. So this is a thing that you can come to that's your duty in protecting your own people, to come to your senators and tell them, hey, stop it. To summarize the whole meeting that we have here in this wonderful auditorium, arranged by Tom here, and I think with some inspiration from Dave. Huh?
Absolutely.
I want to summarize. We have a war going on. By closing our eyes, we are not going to prevent the war from going on. The war is a double war against the Islamic extremists, the Islamists. These are also the flag bearer of the terrorism activity. We have to participate in this war. We have to be active in this war. And there is no doubt that we will win this war if we have the right leadership. It's up to you to make sure that we have the right leadership. And in cases that we don't have, that we have some hesitant leadership, you can send a message. The answer is really in your hand. And for the sake of your children and grandchildren, be active, be active, be active. Thank you.
You know, I would just like to add this. Why support Israel? Why pray for the peace of Jerusalem? Because God says so. Amen.